A world at the edge, the sons of Varos bled across the horizon, two molten orbs sinking behind a wall of jagged mountains. The rivers that wound through the plains caught the light, running cold like veins of fire. To the Vair people, dusk was holy. Every evening they gathered on balconies and temple steps to watch the sky burn, whispering old prayers in voices that shimmered like song-dot to Cale Branson. The sight was just another reminder that he lived far from home. He leaned against a railing in the crowded marketplace, grease still smudging his hands from the day's repairs. His coveralls smelled faintly of coolant and metal dust, and the aliens around him gave him space, not out of respect, but unease. The Vair were tall, thin, their translucent skin glowing faintly in the fading light. Their wide, luminous eyes followed him as though he might break something simply by standing there. 3 years on this world, and they still stared. Cale sighed and adjusted the strap of his tool pack. Let them look. He'd been stared at before, on battlefields, in bars, in council courts. Humanity wasn't trusted. Not yet. Too reckless, too violent, too unpredictable. The council allowed humans into the stars, but only on short leashes. Contract work, low-level engineering, guard duty on backwater stations. No command, no fleets, no power, but Cale didn't need their trust. He had his hands, his tools, and a stubborn streak longer than the Leviathan's hull. Leviathan, the thought, came unbidden, and Cale's jaw tightened. The warship haunted him still, humanity's first dreadnought. The ship that had ended the Terran siege, broken the blockade, and forced the galaxy to acknowledge Earth, wasn't a child tugging at their robes. It was a species that could fight. Cale had served on her during those final brutal months. Just a technician, crawling through vent shafts with plasma torches and patch kits. But he'd felt the hum of her reactors through his bones, the way her guns roared like judgment across the void. He'd thought she was invincible. Then the war ended, and the council demanded Leviathan be silenced. Too dangerous, they said. Too disruptive. Humanity wasn't ready for such power. The ship was retired, hidden, entombed. Cale had agreed at first. Humanity was raw, battered, desperate to belong. But years later, with the council still treating his people like children, he wondered if they'd made a mistake. The crowd around him stirred. Laughter, chatter, glowing lanterns swinging between stalls of fruit and fabrics. To the Vair, this was peace. To Cale, it was fragile glass waiting to shatter. And then, without warning, it did. The sky went dark. Shadows swallowed the suns, and the marketplace erupted in gasps. Cale turned upward. At first, he thought storm clouds had gathered. Then the clouds shifted, sleek and angular, with engines burning faint red. Ships, not council patrols. Not freighters. These were warships. The first blast hit a tower at the edge of the square, vaporizing stone in a thunderous crack. The crowd dissolved into screams as debris rained down. Cale ducked, dragging a pair of Vair children out of the way, as a burning beam crashed where they'd stood. Panic spread like fire. Overhead, the fleet descended, dozens of vessels, black as night, their hulls carved with jagged scars and glowing symbols. Predatory. Hungry. Someone screamed a name Cale had heard only in whispers. The Cormai. His stomach dropped. Raiders from the deep reaches beyond council space. Cale had heard stories in smoky bars. Fleets that appeared without warning. Worlds that burned. Survivors dragged in chains. The Cormai didn't bargain. They didn't occupy. They broke. Energy fire rained from the sky, smashing the city's outer defenses as though they were nothing. Towers cracked and fell. The ground shook beneath Cale's boots. Cale. The voice cut through the chaos. He spun. Pushing through the crowd was Yara. Her silver-tinted skin shimmered with fear, her luminous eyes wide. She wore the flowing cloak of a linguist, the kind she always fidgeted with when nervous. Kale had worked with her often, translating counsel, schematics into Veyer dialects. They'd shared quiet meals, jokes that never quite translated. In another life, maybe more. Now, she looked ready to collapse. "They're here," she gasped, grabbing his arm. "The Cormai. I see them," Kale said. He glanced upward at the fleet, blotting out the suns. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his gut twisted with anger. He'd seen this before. On Earth, when stronger powers thought humanity was weak. On Mars, when fleets blockaded starving colonies. Treaties and promises had done nothing. Then either Y, a R single quotes S grip, tightened. "The shelters won't hold," Kale said grimly. "They want slaves, not survivors." Her expression crumpled. Around them, panic surged as Cormai dropships screamed toward the city. Kale's mind raced. He knew how this story ended. Fire, chains, silence. Unless... His heart pounded as the thought struck him. There was one chance. One weapon that could meet a fleet like this. Head dash on. Leviathan. He hadn't spoken of it in years. Most humans hadn't. The Council had buried her under 1,000 lies. But Kale had been there. He'd seen where they entombed her. He knew the truth. You don't dismantle a god. You chain it, lock it away, and pray no one wakes it. But the Cormai weren't going to stop. Veyros would burn, and then the sector, and then maybe more. Unless someone unleashed the monster, Kale's decision hardened like steel. He looked at Yara. "If we don't stop them here, they'll take the whole sector. There's one chance." Her breath caught. She knew. Her eyes widened. "You don't mean..." "Yes." His voice was iron. "I know where she sleeps." Before she could answer, a thunderous crash shook the plaza. A Cormai dropship slammed into the street, molten metal hissing from its hull. The ramp hissed open. The creatures that emerged were worse than the stories. Twice Kale's height, armored in plates that pulsed faintly with energy. Their 4 arms carried weapons like molten blades. Their faces were masks of bone and jagged. Tusks, eyes burning with hunger. The crowd broke completely, scattering in every direction. YA froze in terror. One of the giants roared, raising its weapon. Kale didn't think. He grabbed her hand and yanked. "Run!" And they did. Through fire. Through collapsing stone. Through the screams of the dying. Not toward the shelters. Not toward safety. Toward a secret humanity was never meant to touch again. Toward the Leviathan. The warship that could break the galaxy's best. Or doom them all. Asterisk. The buried giant. The city burned behind them. Kale and Yara ran through streets. Choked with smoke and fire. The thunder of Cormai warships shaking the air with every strike. Whole spires toppled in showers of sparks. The shrieks of the wounded echoed between the stone towers, mingling with the grinding roar of alien engines overhead. Kale didn't look back. He'd seen enough worlds die to know that if he turned, if he hesitated, the weight of it would crush him. He focused on the road ahead, dragging Yara with him as they sprinted through alleys littered with rubble. "Where are we going?" Yara shouted, her voice nearly lost beneath the chaos. "The outskirts," Kale said, chest heaving. "Old Drydock. Mountain range west of the city." Yara stumbled but kept pace. "That place is restricted. No one goes there. Council. Orders," Kale finished grimly. "Yeah, I know." He didn't have time to explain more. Every second they wasted, the Cormai closed in. Dropships screamed overhead, disgorging warriors into the streets. Kale heard the crack of Veyer defense. Weapons feeble against the invaders' armor. The battle wasn't a battle at all. It was slaughter, They cut through an abandoned tram tunnel and emerged onto a road leading out of the city. The land beyond stretched into vast, rolling plains that glowed faintly under the twin suns. In the distance, jagged mountains clawed. At the horizon, somewhere beneath those mountains, lay the thing the council wanted forgotten. The Leviathan asterisk. They pushed on until Kale's legs burned and Yara collapsed to her knees. The sky above was filled with dark silhouettes, enemy ships blotting out the stars. Kale crouched beside her, scanning the skies. "We have to keep moving." "I can't," Yara gasped. Her skin, normally shimmering with faint bioluminescence, dulled to gray. Sweat beaded along her forehead. "You're—" "Faster. Go." Kale barked a bitter laugh. "And let you get carved in half by a raider? Not a chance." He tugged her upright, slinging her arm over his shoulder. "We move together. One step, then another. That's all." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded weakly. Together. They pushed on. The plains gave way to rocky foothills, then steep paths winding into the mountains. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air grew, carrying the acrid tongue of smoke from the city far below. Kale's muscles screamed, but he forced himself onward, counting each step like a prayer. Finally, after hours of grueling ascent, they reached a cliffside where jagged metal jutted from the rock like broken teeth. Rusted platforms collapsed. Scaffolding and shattered cranes marked the remains of an old construction site. Vines grew across abandoned machinery, and the air was heavy with dust. The dry asterisk YARA staggered, staring at the ruins with wide eyes. This is Forbidden's ground. The council sealed it decades ago." "Of course they did," Kale muttered. He stepped over twisted beams, scanning the rock wall, until his fingers found the outline of a sealed hatch half buried under rubble. He brushed dust away. Symbols in both human and council script glowed faintly on its surface. Access. Restricted Class Omega. Kale's chest tightened. This was it. Asterisk. He dug his fingers into the edges of the hatch and pulled. Metal groaned in protest, unmoving. He cursed under his breath, then rummaged through his pack, pulling free a plasma cutter. Sparks hissed as he cut through the locking clamps. After several minutes of searing effort, the hatch gave way with a screech of torn steel. A stairwell yawned into darkness below. The air that drifted out was cold, dry, carrying the faint metallic tang of old machines. Yara hesitated at the threshold, luminous eyes wide. "Kale, what's down there?" He looked at her. His throat felt tight, but his voice was steady. "The only chance we've got." The stairwell spiraled down, deeper and deeper, the air growing colder with each step. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the walls, casting long shadows. The silence was suffocating, broken only by their footsteps and the distant groan of settling metal. Yara kept close to Kale, her hand brushing the wall for balance. "You knew about this," she whispered. "All this time." "I was stationed here once," Kale admitted. End of the siege. Council wanted human crews to strip her, decommission her. I was just a tech, patching damage. But I saw where they buried her. And you never told anyone? He gave a humorless smile. What good would it have done? The council made sure anyone who spoke about her disappeared. Easier to let her fade into myth. They reached the bottom of the stairwell. The tunnel opened into a cavern so vast, Kale felt his breath catch. And there she was, the Leviathan. She rested in the darkness like a mountain of steel, her black hull stretching into shadows. Even dormant, she radiated presence. Rows of silent cannons lined her flanks. Scarred armor plating bore the ghosts of battles long past. Her prow jutted forward like the snout of some ancient predator, hungry even in slumber. Yara froze, her mouth slightly open. Her skin shimmered faintly, reacting instinctively to the awe of what lay before her. "Stars," she whispered. "It's real." Cale's throat tightened. He felt it, too, that old hum in his bones, that sense that the Leviathan wasn't just metal and circuits. She was alive, and she remembered. He stepped forward slowly, boots echoing on the steel catwalk that led to the docking ramp. His hand brushed the cold railing, and memories flooded back. The thunder of her guns, the vibration of her engines, the way crews shouted and sang and cried inside her halls. Yara's voice trembled. You can't mean to fly this." Cale glanced back at her. She was built to fight fleets like theirs. That's what she's for. But it's impossible. You can't control her alone. He gave her a grim smile. "Watch me." The docking ramp groaned as Cale keyed in his. Old access code. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low rumble, lights flickered along the Leviathan's spine. The ramp extended slowly, metal grinding against stone. Yara's breath hitched. "It's waking." Cale's pulse pounded in his ears. Systems whispered alive, flickers of data running through ancient circuits. Recognition protocols scanned the intruders, and something deep within the Leviathan seemed to pause, then accept. She remembered him. Cale placed a hand on the hull, whispering under his breath, "It's been a long time." Above, the cavern shook with a distant explosion. Dust rained from the ceiling. The Cormai were still advancing. It was only a matter of time before they found the dock. Cale turned to Yara. "We don't have much time. Help me get the reactor online." I don't know how." "You translate, don't you?" Cale said sharply. "Half the systems are locked with council code. I can't break it alone, but you can." Her eyes darted between him and the warship. Fear warred with something else, a spark of determination. Finally, she nodded Dot together. They ran up the ramp into the belly of the beast Dot behind them. The cavern shuddered again, louder this time. The Cormai were coming, and if Cale failed to wake her, the Leviathan would remain buried forever. Asterisk awakening the beast inside the Leviathan. Silence reigned. Cale's boots rang against cold deck plating as he led Yara through corridors dark as tombs. Emergency strips flickered weakly along the walls, throwing broken shadows across bulkheads scarred from old battles. Dust coated everything. Disturbed only by their passing Dot, it felt like walking through the bones of a giant. Yara trailed close, her glowing eyes wide as she looked around. "This is enormous," she whispered. "It's like a city inside a shell." "Bigger," Cale said, voice flat. "She's not a ship. She's a fortress." They passed through silent compartments. Barracks with empty bunks, mess halls with overturned trays, control rooms with shattered displays. All abandoned, all waiting. It was as if the crew had stepped out for a moment and never returned. Cale remembered the noise that had once filled these halls. Boots pounding, voices shouting orders, the deep hum of engines reverberating through the decks. The Leviathan had been alive then. Now she was asleep, but not for long. They reached the central reactor chamber. The doors loomed 3 stories high, reinforced with blackened armor. Cale keyed in an override. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ancient locks disengaged with a bone-rattling groan, and the doors slid open. Heat rolled out Dot at the chamber's heart. A sphere of dormant plasma hung within a cage of conduits, silent and dark. Massive conduits ran like veins from the eye. Sphere into the ship's spine. Above it all, ancient glyphs and human-coded consoles blinked faintly, waiting for input. Cale's throat tightened. "Here we go." He climbed to the main console, hands flying across the dusty surface. Panels flickered weakly, fighting to reboot. He began bypassing safeties, rerouting power from auxiliary cores. Come on, girl. Wake up, Yara stepped. Beside him, scanning lines of alien code across the displays. These locks, she murmured. They're written in Council cipher. Deep-level command. Kale gritted his teeth. Figures. Wait. Yara's fingers danced across the console. Her eyes narrowed as she muttered in her own language, translating the patterns. They didn't just seal her. They crippled her systems. Even if you start the reactor, weapons and nav controls are chained by command phrases. Dozens of them. Can you break them? She hesitated. It will take time. We don't have time. As if to answer him, the cavern outside rumbled. The sound of explosions echoed faintly through the ship's hull. Kale clenched his fists. Work fast. I'll handle the rest. He ran diagnostic after diagnostic, forcing power cells to prime. Conduits to hum. Slowly, the Leviathan began to stir. Lights brightened along the reactor chamber. A low vibration thrummed through the deck as dormant systems whispered awake. Kale exhaled. That's it. Breathe. The hum deepened. The plasma sphere flickered, faint sparks crawling across its surface. Conduits glowed as power flowed outward, racing into the Leviathan's veins. The air grew heavy, warm. Yara's voice cut in sharply. Kale, he looked. Red glyphs flared across the console. Warning symbols. They're forcing entry, Yara said. Her voice trembled. Kormai. Sensors show a breach in the outer cavern. They've found us. Kale's jaw tightened. Then we moved faster. The deck shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. A muffled roar echoed through the hall. The sound of heavy weapons tearing through stone. Yara's hands blurred over the console, translating code, stripping away Council locks. Each time she cracked one, a new system flickered online. Thrusters, shields, targeting arrays. The Leviathan groaned as if stretching after a long sleep. Kale's heart pounded. They were so close. Another explosion rocked the cavern. Metal screeched as part of the outer structure collapsed. Somewhere deep within the ship, alarms began to blare. They're inside. Yara whispered that the first Kormai strike team hit the corridor outside the reactor chamber. Their boots thundered against the deck, their guttural roars echoing through the halls. Kale grabbed a discarded rifle from a weapons rack, slamming a fresh cell into place. Stay on the codes, he told Yara. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. What about you? He chambered the rifle with a harsh snap. I'll buy you time. The doors burst open in a shower of sparks. Armored giants surged through, their blades glowing molten red. Kale fired. The rifle cracked, bursts of plasma slamming into the first invader. The creature staggered, but didn't fall. It roared and charged. Kale dove aside, rolling to one knee. He fired again, the shot punching through the raider's exposed joint. The beast collapsed with a bellow, but more poured in, filling the chamber. With shadows and fire, Kale fought like a cornered wolf, his rifle screaming, bolts of plasma searing through the dark. But for every raider that fell, two more advanced. Their blades sliced through consoles, sparks showering. Kale! Yara shouted that. He risked a glance. She'd stripped the final lock. The reactor core flared, blinding white plasma igniting within the containment field. The Leviathan roared. The vibration in the deck surged into a full-throated hum. Lights blazed across every wall, systems roaring to life. The ship's deep voice, synthetic, cold, and unmistakably alive, echoed through the chamber. Reactor. Online. Primary systems initialized, awaiting command. Kale's chest tightened. She remembered. A Kormai warrior lunged at him. Kale sidestepped, slamming his rifle stock into its tusked face. It reeled, and Kale shouted over the noise. Leviathan! Defense protocol now. The deck shook as automated turrets unfolded from the walls. They spat streams of plasma fire, shredding the invaders in a storm of light. The chamber filled with screams and smoke. Kale dropped to one knee, panting, as the last raider fell smoking. To the deck, Yara stared around in shock. It's awake. Kale managed a grim smile. Not fully, not yet. He looked at the glowing reactor, feeling its heat wash over him. But she's hungry. The Leviathan systems cascaded. Online. Across the cavern, lights flared along her massive hull. Engines rumbled deep in her spine. Guns rotated slowly, yawning awake like predators stretching after slumber. Over the comms, a cold synthetic voice spoke again. External hostiles detected. Weapons armed, awaiting authorization. Kale clenched his fists. For years, the galaxy had whispered that humanity was dangerous, unpredictable, too wild for the stars. For years, they'd buried the proof of it. Now, the Cormai were about to see that proof firsthand. He looked at Yara, then at the glowing consoles. His voice was steady, filled with iron. Leviathan. Authorization granted. The cavern split with thunder. From the Leviathan's flanks, a storm of plasma erupted, tearing through rock and steel. The Cormai breaching teams outside the dock were annihilated in a heartbeat, reduced to ash by a wave of incandescent fire. The entire mountain shook as the warship fired for the first time in decades, her roar echoing like the wrath of a god awakened. Kale felt it in his bones. The ship was alive again, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first battle. The mountain shook as though the world itself were breaking. Inside Leviathan's bridge, Kale gripped the command chair as dust rained from the ceiling. The cavern walls split and collapsed under the pressure of engines long dormant, now roaring. Back to life. Stone shattered, and a pillar of fire tore upward as the dreadnought's thrusters ignited. Brace! Kale shouted. The Leviathan surged. Rock exploded around her as the warship ripped free from her tomb. For a moment, Kale thought the mountain would crush them. Then the ceiling gave way in a blinding storm of fire and stone. The Leviathan roared skyward, her armored hull shedding rubble like a beast shaking off chains. Veyros sprawled below, burning. The once proud city lay in ruins, towers collapsed into firestorms, the plains scarred with craters. Cormai warships prowled the skies like vultures, their black hulls glowing with crimson markings. Dropships darted back and forth, disgorging. More warriors into the streets. But now, something far greater rose to meet them. The Leviathan breached the smoke, engines blazing like suns. Her cannons turned, their barrels glowing with priming power. And across the battlefield, every eye, Veyer, human, and Cormai alike, turned skyward. The beast had awakened. On the bridge, Yara stumbled to a console, her silver skin glowing faintly in the light of the displays. Kale, their fleet numbers. Doesn't matter. Kale cut her off. His voice was calm, almost cold. She was built to fight fleets. He felt the hum of the Leviathan through the chair, the deep vibration that spoke of endless power waiting to be unleashed. Targeting online, the ship's synthetic voice intoned. Hostile vessels, 73. Firing solution ready. Yara's eyes widened. 73? Kale smiled grimly. Good odds. The first Cormai warship turned toward them, its angular prow bristling with weapons. It opened fire, streams of molten energy lancing toward the Leviathan. The ship's shields flared, shimmering with sparks, but held. Kale didn't hesitate. Return fire? The Leviathan answered with a thunderous salvo. Her broadside erupted in light, plasma lances, ripping through the void. The Cormai warship never had a chance. Shields shattered, armor crumpled, and the vessel split apart in a blinding explosion. The shockwave rolled across the sky. The battlefield froze. For the first time in living memory, the Cormai had met something they could not break. Then the fleet moved. Dozens of warships converged, unleashing a storm of fire. The Leviathan was hammered from every angle, her shields blazing as the sky filled with explosions. Kale gritted his teeth, hands white-knuckled on the armrests. Shields at 70%. The ship reported. Keep firing, Kale snarled. All batteries. The Leviathan turned in a slow, deadly arc. Her main guns unleashed another storm, plasma bolts tearing through enemy lines. 3 Cormai cruisers exploded in rapid succession, their burning hulks tumbling from the sky. Yara clung to her console, voice shaking. Kale, they're regrouping. They're flanking. Kale's eyes burned with focus. Then we cut them down before they close. The battle became chaos. The Leviathan's guns roared, each shot tearing ships apart. Her hull shook with every impact, shields flaring white as enemy fire pounded relentlessly. Kale issued commands like a man possessed, targeting orders. Power reroutes, shield rotations. Yara worked frantically at her console, translating counsel overrides still buried in the ship's systems. For every enemy ship they destroyed, more closed in. Kale's chest ached with adrenaline, but he felt alive in a way he hadn't since the war. The Leviathan wasn't just a weapon. She was a reminder. Humanity didn't bow. Humanity fought. And with each Cormai vessel that died screaming in. Fire. Kale felt the balance shift. The raiders weren't invincible. They bled. They broke. On the ground, survivors lifted their eyes to the sky. The Veer huddled in shattered shelters, watching in awe as a single warship tore through the fleet that had come to enslave them. For generations, they had trusted the Council's treaties to keep them safe. But tonight, it wasn't the Council. That saved them. It was a human warship. Shields at 30%, the Leviathan's voice droned calmly. Hull integrity stable. Ammunition reserves at 62%. Kale wiped blood from a cut on his forehead, his mind racing. Yara? Any progress on unlocking the heavy batteries? She shook her head, strands of silver hair clinging to her damp skin. I've bypassed 3 encryption layers, but the final locks, they're buried deep. They won't let humans access them. Kale slammed his fist against the chair. They wanted us weak. Yara met his eyes, determination burning there despite the fear. Then let's prove them wrong. The Leviathan surged forward, her thrusters flaring bright as she plowed through the enemy formation. Broadside cannons tore. Apart frigates, point defense turrets shredded swarms of enemy drones. The Cormai fought savagely, but their formation crumbled under the dreadnought's onslaught. On the comms, intercepted signals shrieked with confusion. The raiders had never faced anything like this. Their prey had teeth, and those teeth were tearing them apart. Then the enemy flagship moved. It was larger than the others. A monstrous vessel with a prow shaped like a blade and a spine bristling with glowing spires. Kale's stomach dropped as its massive energy signature filled the displays. Kale. Yara's voice trembled. That ship. Its power readings. The Leviathan's sensors flared red. Warning. Hostile vessel deploying unknown weapon. Kale's eyes narrowed. Show me. The flagship's spines unfolded, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire ship was haloed in crimson light. Energy gathered its prow, condensing into a single spear of burning plasma. Kale's blood ran cold. That thing'll punch straight through us. He whispered. Yara gripped the console, her skin paling. Kale, what do we do? The Leviathan's voice was calm, almost serene. Superweep on charge at 90%. Estimated time to fire, 20 seconds. Kale's knuckles whitened. He'd fought impossible odds before. He'd faced fleets larger than this, enemies stronger than this. But this was different. If that weapon fired, Leviathan might not survive. He rose from the chair, fire in his eyes. And we don't give them the chance. Kale, Yara began, but before she could finish, the crimson spear ignited, casting blood-red light across the battlefield. The Kormai flagship prepared to fire. Asterisk and Kale knew the next moment would decide not just the battle, but whether humanity's greatest weapon would live or die. Asterisk shadows of the galaxy. Crimson spear blazed across the void. Kale braced for impact, but at the last moment, the Leviathan lurched violently to port. The super weapon beam skimmed her hull, ripping away armored plating in a torrent of molten metal. The bridge shook, alarms screamed, and Kale was thrown hard against his restraints. Asterisk, damage report. He shouted over the din. Hull breach, deck 8, shields critical. Primary armor compromised. The Leviathan's voice answered, calm despite the chaos. Yara clutched the console, her face pale. If that blast had hit us head on, Kale didn't let her finish. We'd be vapor. No time for what-ifs. Get me firing solutions. The Leviathan's cannons roared again, pounding the flagship's shields. For a heartbeat, Kale believed they could still win. Then the enemy vessel began charging its weapon again, the spines along its back glowing. Hotter. Yara's voice broke with fear. It's already recharging, Kale. We won't survive another. Then we won't give them another, Kale snapped, his jaw clenched. All batteries. Everything we've got. Asterisk fire. The dreadnought unleashed hell. Plasma lances tore into the flagship's shields, ripping them apart. The enemy staggered, armor glowing and shattering under the barrage. For a moment, Kale saw fire bloom along its hull, and the crimson glow snuffed out, the charging sequence aborted. The flagship limped backward, retreating toward the outer edges of the battle. Kale slumped back, sweat dripping into his eyes. Cowards. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. That weapon? The Kormai had unveiled it too soon. Next time, they wouldn't make the same mistake. The galaxy watches across the stars. The battle broadcast spread like wildfire in the slums of Rinol. Station, miners crowded into a holoparlor, watching with disbelief as the Leviathan tore through the Kormai fleet. For decades, they had lived under the raiders' shadow, their families stolen and their wages stripped for tribute. Now, on flickering screens, they saw the impossible. A human warship breaking the unbreakable in the halls of the Vaer Council. Ambassadors shouted over one another, demanding explanations. The footage showed their secret, the Leviathan, now alive, unleashed and commanded not by them, but by a single human. Humanity was never authorized to command Leviathan. One shouted, his crest feathers flaring, "They will destabilize." "The balance of the sectors," hissed another. "The Kormai will retaliate against all of us." At the center of it all, High Chancellor Vaith watched in silence, her 4 hands folded. Her jewel-toned eyes glimmered with calculation. When the chamber quieted, her words cut like a blade. Then humanity must be brought to heel. A dangerous interest back aboard the Leviathan, Kale slumped in the command chair as the ship drifted. Through debris fields, thousands of lives had ended in fire, but for the first time in generations, the Kormai had been forced to retreat. Yara leaned against the railing, her silver skin dulled with exhaustion. "You don't understand, Kale. Word of this will spread. The Council won't see you as a savior. They'll see you as a threat." Kale barked a bitter laugh. "Story of my life." But before Yara could answer, the comms console chimed. Hologram flickered into being, not of the Council, but of a gaunt, scaled-faced Kale knew too well. "Commander Jirac, The Cormai officer's slit-pupiled eyes gleamed with fury. "Human," he hissed, his voice a rasp like broken glass. "You dare defy us with that relic?" Kale leaned forward. "Relic? Funny. Looked to me like it broke your fleet." Jairak's jaws curled back, exposing rows of needle teeth. "This battle was nothing. You think one ship can change the stars? We will return with fire greater than you can imagine. And when we do, we will tear your kind from existence." The hologram snapped away. Kale stared at the empty space, rage coiling inside him. He'd heard threats before, but this was different. They were coming back, and next time, they would aim not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. That the infiltration night fell over Veros. The city still burned in places, though survivors had begun to gather around Leviathan's shadow, treating her like a guardian. Kale left the bridge at last, exhaustion dragging at him, while Yara stayed behind to monitor systems. For the first time since the awakening, he allowed himself a moment to breathe. That was when the infiltrators came. Silent as shadows, a squad of Cormai operatives slipped through the ruins, their chitinous armor blending with the night. They moved with eerie coordination, bypassing patrols and scanning for a single target, the alien who had unlocked Leviathan's heart. Yara never heard them enter. One moment she was working at her console, decoding another council lockout. The next, a hiss filled the air. Her eyes widened, and before she could scream, a stunned charge struck her chest. The last thing she saw was Kale's face on the bridge display, unaware. Then darkness swallowed her. The council moves by dawn. The news spread like wildfire. Yara was gone. Kale tore through the ship, demanding answers, but the infiltrators had left no trace. Only a fragment of code lingered on the console where she'd been working. A mocking message left behind. "She belongs to us now." Kale's fist slammed against the metal wall hard enough to bruise. He could fight fleets, but shadows? Kidnappers. In the dark? That helplessness was worse than any battlefield. Before he could act, the comms lit again, this time with the emblem of the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Vaith's image filled the bridge, regal and cold. "Captain Kale, the Leviathan is not yours. You have awakened a weapon forbidden for human command. You will surrender her immediately or face the consequences." Kale's voice was ice. "Consequences? You've let the Cormai burn your worlds for centuries. And now, when someone finally fights back, you want me to stand down?" Vaith's expression didn't flicker. "This is not about the Cormai. It is about control. You have disrupted the balance. And for that, you will answer." The transmission cut, leaving silence on the bridge. Kale stood there, trembling with rage. Between the Council's betrayal and the Cormai's looming return, the truth was clear. Humanity stood alone. Kale's choice, he stared at the stars beyond. The viewport, his chest burning with fury and grief. Yara was gone, taken because she believed in him. The Council wanted him broken. The Cormai wanted him dead. And yet, for the first time in years, Kale felt the fire inside him again. Humanity had been underestimated, ignored, pushed aside. No longer. He reached out, his hand resting on the Leviathan's console. The ship seemed to hum under his touch, as if it shared his resolve. "They want war?" he whispered. "Then we'll give them one." The Leviathan's voice responded. Softly, almost like a vow. "Coordinates ready. We will find her." Kale's jaw tightened. Yara was more than an ally. She was proof that trust between species was possible, and he would burn the stars. Before he let her be taken, the Leviathan turned her prow toward the unknown, engines burning bright. Kale's war was only beginning. Asterisk into the maw, the Leviathan surged into hyperspace, stars stretching into lines of light. Kale stood on the bridge, hands gripping the railing as if force alone could bend the galaxy to his will. His jaw was tight, his eyes red from exhaustion, but his voice was steady. "Track her signal," he ordered. "Fragment located," Leviathan replied, her voice calm. "Encrypted trail embedded in council channels." They handed her over willingly. Kale's blood went cold. He had expected the council's betrayal, but hearing it confirmed made his stomach twist. "They gave her to the Cormai?" "Yes. Her last coordinates matched their flagship. If we move now, we may intercept before they complete their weapon." Kale's knuckles whitened. He knew what that meant. If they succeeded, they wouldn't just destroy Veyros. They would sweep the galaxy clean, beginning with Earth. "We move," he said, straight into their throat. Yara's cage Yara awoke in darkness. The air was damp and cold, filled with the stench of oil and decay. Her wrists were bound with energy cuffs that sparked if she moved too quickly. She blinked, and dim light revealed the curved walls of a cell carved into the heart of the Cormai flagship. A rasping voice slithered through the dark. "Awake, little translator?" Yara's stomach clenched. Jirax stepped into the light, his scaled form towering, his teeth catching the glow. His claws tapped the metal floor, slow and deliberate. "You have value," he hissed. "You unlocked the human relic. You will do it again, for us." Yara lifted her chin, though her heart raced. "You'll kill me before I help you." Jirax. Jaw split into a cruel grin. "Oh no, we will not kill you. We will break you. And when you beg to serve us, the Leviathan will be ours." He leaned close, his breath foul. "And then your human will watch his precious ship turned against him." Yara's chest tightened, but she forced herself not to look away. If Kale was still alive, she had to believe he was coming. She couldn't let Jirax see fear. Instead, she whispered, "He'll burn you first." "For the first time, Jirax." Smile faltered. His tail lashed once, then he turned and left the cell. Yara exhaled shakily. She was alone again, but not broken. Not yet. The pursuit the Leviathan tore through systems faster than any warship had the right to move. Kale refused to stop, even when the crewless ship warned of reactor strain. He lived on caffeine tabs and stubbornness, eyes fixed on the trail. Finally, the flagship appeared. A fortress of black metal hung in orbit around a dying red star, its hull bristling with spines, cannons, and the glowing core of its unfinished weapon. Kale's gut twisted. Yara was in their dot. The Leviathan's voice came soft, almost cautious. "Kale, if we engage them here, there is no retreat." Kale didn't hesitate. "Then we don't retreat." The Leviathan's engines flared, and the warship plunged toward. The beast dot inside the flagship Yara sat in the dark cell, counting the seconds. The vibrations of the ship changed, a new hum, deeper, sharper. She knew that sound. Engines preparing for war. Her heart leapt. Kale had come, but before hope could take root, the door to her cell hissed open. 2 Cormai guards slithered in, dragging her to her feet. "You will watch." One rasped. They hauled her through corridors alive with machinery, until she stood in a cavernous chamber at the ship's core. At its center, suspended in a web of cables, hung the weapon, a pulsating crimson sphere the size of a city, fed by reactors that throbbed like a beating heart. Jirax stood before it, his claws spread wide. "Behold, translator," he hissed. A maw, a cannon that consumes suns. One shot, and your human's relic will melt like wax. Yara's knees weakened. She'd seen weapons before, but nothing like this. If the maw fired, entire worlds would vanish, and Kale was flying straight. Into it, firestorm, the Leviathan dropped from hyperspace in a blaze of light, cannons already roaring. Plasma bolts shredded the first wave of Kormai escorts, turning sleek cruisers into fireballs. Kale stood tall on the bridge, his voice sharp. "Keep their fighters off us. Drive straight for the flagship." The Leviathan responded with fury. Her massive railguns spat slugs the size of buildings, tearing through armor. Fighter wings swarmed like gnats, but her automated turrets carved them apart in sheets of flame. The Kormai flagship responded in kind. Its spines unleashed a storm of missiles and lances, battering Leviathan's shields until the deck shook under Kale's boots. "Shields at 30%. Leviathan warned. Kale gritted his teeth. "Then we bleed them before they bleed. U.S." He forced Leviathan closer, closer, until the two titans filled each other's viewports. Predator and prey locked in orbit over the dying sun. Y, R, a single quotes, see faience in the weapon chamber. The maw began to glow. Energy surged through the cables, filling the sphere with a light that made Yara's eyes burn. Girak raised his claws. "With this shot, the galaxy will kneel." Yara's mind raced. She couldn't break free of the guards, couldn't fight. But she could still think. Her gaze darted across the room, to the conduits that fed them all, to the consoles flashing with Kormai glyphs. She couldn't read them perfectly, but she had studied enough. She stumbled forward, gasping as if in pain. The guards shoved her upright. "Hold," one hissed. Yara's fingers brushed against a panel, and in one swift motion, she slammed her palm against the wrong sequence. Alarms blared. The maw's glow faltered, energy spiking dangerously. Spun, his roar shaking the chamber. "Stop her." The guard seized her, claws digging into her arms. Yara winced, but she smiled through the pain. "He's coming, Girak, and you won't be ready." Collision coursed the Leviathan, broke through the last line of cruisers. Her hull scarred and burning, but still alive. The flagship loomed ahead. The maw's glow now unstable, flickering. Kale saw it. He felt it. Yara had done something. His chest tightened with pride and fury. "Leviathan," he said, his voice low. "We're going through their heart." The warship's engine screamed, pushing past limits, every plate rattling. Kale braced as the distance closed, alarms blaring, shields collapsing. The Kormai flagship turned its weapon toward them. Crimson light gathering in the sphere, two giants, racing toward each other, each carrying the fate of the galaxy. The viewport, filled with red. The maw was about to fire. Kale shouted, "All power forward! Ram them if we have to." The Leviathan answered with a roar of engines, charging headlong into the blaze, and then a white flash consumed the stars. Asterisk the breaking. Of the maw the world vanished in light. For a heartbeat, Kale thought he was dead. The viewport flared white, every alarm screaming at once, the Leviathan shuddering as if the universe itself had cracked. But then the light faded, and he saw the maw had fired too soon. The crimson sphere's unstable glow erupted outward, in a cascade of wild energy, ripping through the Kormai's forward batteries. Whole spires of their flagship melted like wax, armor slagging, reactors flaring. Yara's sabotage had worked. Kale's chest seized. She was still alive. She had to be. "Leviathan," he rasped. "Take us in." The warship obeyed. Engines howled, and the Leviathan plunged straight into the gaping wound, torn in the flagship's side. The maw's heart Yara was thrown to the ground as the chamber quaked. Sparks rained from ruptured conduits, smoke choking the air. The guards staggered. There. Grips loosening. Yara didn't hesitate. She drove her elbow into one's throat, grabbed the other's fallen weapon, and fired point blank. The alien crumpled in a hiss of smoke. Her wrists burned from the cuffs, but she didn't stop. She staggered to the control panel, slamming her. Hands across glyphs until sparks exploded from the conduits. The maw shrieked like a wounded beast. Its glow faltered, then surged wildly, destabilizing faster and faster. And then she heard it, a sound like thunder rolling down the corridors. The Leviathan had come. The Leviathan smashed into the flagship's guts, tearing metal, and hurling fire into the halls. Ramparts unfolded, and Kale stormed down with rifle in hand, his boots pounding through smoke. The Cormai surged to meet him, but Leviathan's drones flanked like shadows, shredding the enemy with ruthless precision. Kale fought like a man possessed, every step driving him closer to Yara. "Direction!" he barked. 2 decks down, central chamber, Leviathan's voice guided. Her life sign is faint, but alive. Kale's throat tightened. He drove harder, cutting through corridors that shook as the maw threatened to explode. Every wall felt like a countdown. Every breath felt like his last. Reunion in Fire. Yara staggered back from the console as another blast rocked the chamber. The maw's surface cracked, streams of energy lashing out like lightning. She dropped the weapon, coughing in the smoke. She couldn't hold out much longer. Then the doors blasted open. Kale strode through the fire, rifle blazing, cutting down. The last of the guards. His eyes locked on hers, and for a moment, the war and the fire didn't matter. "Yara!" She almost collapsed in relief. "Kale, you idiot. You came." He hauled her upright, hands firm despite the tremor in his chest. Always. Their moment shattered as a roar cut through the chamber. Girak's last stone Girak dropped from the rafters, scales scorched but eyes burning. His tail lashed, claws sparking against the floor. "You dare," he bellowed. "You miserable, fragile creatures. You are nothing. Nothing but vermin clawing in the dark." Kale raised his rifle. Girak lunged. The weapon was torn from his hands, claws slashing, sparks flying as metal screamed under the impact. Kale grappled with him, barely holding back the brute strength. Girak's jaws snapped inches from his face. "You will kneel." The warlord roared. Kale snarled, forcing his words through gritted teeth. "Humanity kneels to no one." He drove his knee up, seized Girak's arm, and slammed it into the console. Circuits shattered. Energy from the maw whipped free, lashing across Girak's body. The warlord screamed as light consumed him, his form collapsing into ash. The chamber shook violently. The maw was tearing itself apart. Escape from the maw leviathans. Voice thundered through the comms. "Kale, Yara, the weapon is critical. Detonation in 100 seconds. Kale pulled Yara close. "We run." They sprinted through collapsing corridors, fire and lightning chasing them, the ship groaning. Like a dying beast. Behind them, reactors blew one by one, each explosion chasing the last dot at the final hatch. Kale nearly stumbled, but the Leviathan's drones hauled them through, dragging them aboard just as the hatch sealed. "Punch it!" Kale yelled. Engines roared, and the Leviathan shot free of the flagship, just as the maw exploded. The blast swallowed the dying star, ripping the flagship apart in a cascade of fire and broken hull. The shock wave hurled Leviathan end over end, alarms shrieking, until at last they righted and drifted among the wreckage. Silence fell. Aftermath Kale sat on the bridge, Yara beside him, both battered and burned but alive. On the viewport, debris drifted like the bones of gods. The Cormai fleet scattered, their will broken with the loss of their warlord and weapon. Across the galaxy, every observer who had doubted humanity would hear of this day. Yara's voice was soft, hoarse. "We shouldn't have survived," Kale exhaled, leaning back. "No, but we did. And now they'll know." She turned to him, eyes tired but fierce. "Know what?" He stared out at the wreckage, at the dawn breaking over the ruined star. that when humanity's warship faces the galaxy's best, he clenched his fist, voice like steel. We break them. The Leviathan drifted onward, scarred but unbowed, carrying 2 stubborn hearts, and a message that would echo across every world. Humanity would not kneel. Asterisk epilogue weeks later. Whispers spread through council halls and warlord courts alike. Whispers of the ship that had torn through the Cormai, of the humans who had faced the galaxy's greatest and returned alive. Some called it a myth, others a warning, but to those who had seen the fire in the void, it was something more, Dot. It was a promise. Asterisk.